Today we are diving into a book that didn't just make a splash, it completely changed how we understand our own minds. I'm talking about the masterpiece from Daniel Kahneman, Thinking Fast and Slow.
All right, to get us started, I've got a little puzzle for you. Just read the question on the screen. Take a second. Don't overthink it. What's the very first answer that just popped into your head? If you thought 10 cents, don't worry, you're in very good company. It feels right, it's intuitive, and it's wrong. See, if the ball was 10 cents, the bat would be $1.10, and the total would be $1.20. The real answer, the ball is 5 cents and the bat is $1.05. And that tiny little mistake you might have just made, it actually reveals a massive secret about how our brains are wired.
Our guide for figuring this all out is the brilliant Nobel Prize winner Daniel Kahneman. And his book, well, it's not just some collection of studies. Think of it as the owner's manual for your brain, the one you never knew you needed. It explains exactly why we all make these predictable, sometimes totally irrational mistakes.
Now, the whole book is built on this one powerful idea. Our thinking is basically run by two characters in our heads. First, you've got System 1. That's the star of the show. It's your gut reaction, the fast, automatic part that yelled 10 cents. Then you've got System 2. Think of it as the careful, analytical supporting character, who also happens to be pretty lazy and has to be woken up to actually check the math.
So, to really get a grip on this, we're going to walk through the book just like Kahneman laid it out. We'll look at these two systems, the mental shortcuts they create, why we get so darn overconfident, how we make choices, and we'll end with a really mind-bending idea about our two selves.
Okay, part 1, the two systems. The biggest takeaway here is that even though our rational System 2 feels like it's the boss, it is incredibly lazy. Honestly, it would much rather just rubber stamp whatever System 1 comes up with than do any real hard work. This leads to a fascinating idea called ego depletion. Basically, your deliberate mental effort, that's your System 2, is like a muscle, and it gets tired. Kahneman talks about this famous study that found judges were way more likely to grant parole first thing in the morning or right after lunch. As the day wore on and their mental energy drained, what did they do? They defaulted to the easier, safer choice, just deny parole. So what's the lesson for you and me? It's simple, but it's a game changer. Make your biggest, most important decisions when your mind is fresh. Early in the day is usually best. And whatever you do, do not trust your gut when you're tired or hungry, because what you think is intuition is probably just your lazy brain taking a shortcut.
Now, this laziness is what opens the door for all the mental shortcuts we're going to talk about in Part 2, heuristics and biases. Heuristics is just a fancy word for those mental rules of thumb that System 1 uses to make snap judgments. And one of the most powerful ones is the availability heuristic. The idea is simple. If you can think of it easily, you assume it happens a lot.
Let's try another one. Think about the letter K. Is it more likely to be the first letter of a word or the third letter? Go on. What do you think? Most people say the first. Why? Because it's so much easier for our brains to think of words that start with K, like kite or key or kangaroo. But in reality, the letter K shows up as the third letter almost twice as often. We just mistake how easy it is to remember something for how common it actually is. So the takeaway is to build yourself a little mental speed bump. Before you make a big judgment call, especially about risk, just stop and consciously ask yourself, wait a minute, is this based on facts and data? Or is it just based on a story or an image that popped into my head really easily?
And that leads us straight into Part 3, overconfidence. You see, our System 1 is a born storyteller. It takes little bits and pieces of information and instantly weaves them into a simple, coherent story. The problem is, this creates what Kahneman calls an illusion of understanding. It makes us feel like we know what's going on, even when we have no idea.
This is the classic I knew it all along effect, also known as hindsight bias. After the stock market crashes or after a surprise election, it's so easy to look back and create a neat little story where the outcome seems like it was obvious and inevitable. We completely forget how uncertain everything felt before it happened, which makes us way too confident that we can predict what's coming next.
This quote from Kahneman just nails it. We are prone to overestimate how much we understand about the world and to underestimate the role of chance in events. Our brains are wired to see patterns and cause and effect, but we are consistently blind to the massive role that pure, dumb luck plays in, well, almost everything.
So how do we fight this?
You have to resist the pull of simple stories. When you're looking back at a decision you made, don't just judge it by the outcome. You can make a brilliant decision that has a bad outcome because of bad luck. You have to force yourself to judge the process. Did you have good information at the time? Was your reasoning sound? That's what matters.
All right, on to part 4, and this is the work that actually won Kahneman the Nobel Prize, How We Make Choices. He and his partner, Amos Tversky, basically blew up classical economics by showing we don't make decisions based on cold, hard logic. Nope, we make them based on the feeling of potential gains and losses, and we are fundamentally terrified of losing.
This chart shows the whole idea in a nutshell. The emotional pain you feel from losing $100 is roughly twice as powerful as the pleasure you get from gaining that same $100. This one simple fact explains so much about human behavior. Why we'll take crazy risks to avoid a sure loss, but we get super conservative when we're trying to lock in a gain.
The only way to fight this is to consciously reframe your choices. Your System 1, your gut, is just screaming, "Don't lose, avoid pain." You have to literally force System 2 to wake up and ask the rational question. Okay, looking at this objectively, is the potential gain here really worth the risk? That simple act of reframing can completely change the choice you make.
And finally, we get to the most philosophical and maybe the most mind-bending part of the entire book, the two selves. Kahneman's big idea here is that you're not just one person. You are a combination of an experiencing self that lives in the present moment and a remembering self that tells the story of your life after the fact.
So here's the crazy twist. The remembering self is the one calling the shots. It's the one that makes your decisions for the future. But it's a terrible judge of the past. It basically ignores how long an experience lasted. It only pays attention to two things: the most intense moment, the peak, and how the experience felt right at the very end. It's called the peak end rule. Everything else just gets edited out of the story.
And this leads to a really deep question. Think about it. We often choose to do things that will create good memories, like a miserable, grueling hike to a beautiful summit, even if the experience of it is pretty unpleasant for long stretches. So, when you say you want to be happy, which self are you really trying to please? The one that's actually living your life, moment to moment? Or the one who's just telling its story?
So when you put it all together, what's the point of learning all this? Look, the goal is not to get rid of your fast, intuitive System 1. That's impossible, and you wouldn't want to. The goal is to go from being a puppet of your automatic mind to being an informed observer of it. It's about learning to recognize the signs that you're walking into a cognitive minefield, a situation where your gut is likely to be wrong, and knowing that's the time to slow down and wake up your lazy friend System 2.
And who is this book for? Honestly, everyone. Of course, it's absolutely critical for leaders, investors, doctors, anyone making high-stakes decisions. But really, at its heart, this book is for any person who wants to understand the strange, brilliant, and flawed machine that is the human mind, starting with their own.
Kahneman said his real hope was that the book would enrich our vocabulary for what he called intelligent gossip, the way we talk about other people's decisions and eventually our own. So let's start that conversation right now. Of all these biases we've talked about, overconfidence, loss aversion, hindsight bias, which one do you see popping up the most in your own life? Let us know down in the comments. Thanks for tuning in.